Hi everyone, I'm Heather from Grounded Approach, and I'm back with another video on the introduction diet. This is a really confusing part of GAPS. The book is really helpful, but it still just feels like there's so much information, and because everyone's unique and the guidelines aren't set in stone, it can just feel confusing and people cannot really know what to look out for and second guess themselves and really stress themselves out. And it's very normal for it to be a painful process. We are undoing decades, if not generations, of toxicity and unhealthy eating and just a bad lifestyle. So it's pretty normal when you start intro with all these brand new crazy foods to feel under the weather, to feel like you maybe have the flu, really fatigued. Usually people sleep a ton. Maybe you don't even really want to eat. Some people even throw up. Actually, a lot of people throw up. So just knowing that that is normal and it doesn't mean you're getting worse. It actually is probably your body's way of taking out the trash. All of a sudden it's cleaning up itself and it's trying to take out the trash, but it might just be your body's not detoxing as well as it could. And I have a whole video on regressions and a video on die-off. So if you're kind of confused about that, those might be beneficial to watch first and then come back to this one. So yeah, it's normal for it to be painful. You kind of just want to at least have 1 week at home where you can just relax and chill and watch movies and do your detox baths. You're not going to want to be traveling and, working CEO and all that. So one thing I really also want to emphasize is your primary goal in doing GAPS is reversing your health problems. It is overcoming health issues that you've probably had for a long time. It is not necessarily eating every food. So people can kind of get a little confused or fixated on introducing new foods. I still can't introduce dairy, I still blah, blah, blah. Yes, that's annoying sometimes, but let's look at the whole picture. Okay, you can't introduce dairy, but that's not necessarily a marker of health. What's maybe more a marker of your health is how's your psoriasis doing? How's your anxiety doing? Are you still in pain from rheumatoid arthritis? Is that calming down? If all these things are getting better, even slightly, we can't be frustrated as much about not introducing foods. Because like I said, it just takes time. And you need to trust your body. It's good that our body is giving us that feedback of foods that it can't handle. So let's go on to the first question, which is how long do I stay on intro? This is super general because everyone is so different. Some people just have a little bit of IBS and they might flow through it quickly. Other people might have, ulcerative colitis and they're bleeding 12 times a day when they go to the bathroom and they can only tolerate 2 foods and they have hives all over their body, okay? So we have different starting points. So some of those people might breeze through the intro diet and others might want to be on it for a year. It just depends. And so when we remember that the goal isn't having every food, the goal is your symptoms getting better and your body recovering. That's really important to know. But generally, don't quote me on this, but this is the general population. I would say intro diet takes between 2 weeks would probably be the shortest and 3 months. That's what I would say for most people. That's just kind of your bell curve in the middle. But if that's not you, don't stress out. There's a lot of people in your same situation. It can take a lot longer. Now, a lot of people will take their time moving from stage 1 to stage 2, and they'll be on stage 1 for a week, thinking that slower is better, but not necessarily. Stage 1 is quite restricted, and it's generally recommended, if you can, to move to stage 2 pretty quickly. So you can go on stage 1 for 1 day, 2 days, and if you're feeling great, and by feeling great, I mean not having crazy digestive upset and diarrhea, you can move to stage 2 pretty quickly. And a lot of people will camp out there a bit longer. If you don't want to run through it, it's better to probably camp out on stage 2 because that has a lot more building foods that are going to give you more nourishment than stage 1. That being said, there are people who go into stage 1 with really bad diarrhea and loose stools, and it just takes them a really long time to move forward. And sometimes they even have to go further back, remove all plant material and do a carnivore style. If this is you, it's probably good to meet with a practitioner who's experienced because you don't want to just stay on here stuck having diarrhea and not knowing what to do, right? So that's our biggest jump, is from stage 1 to stage 2 is pretty quick. You don't want to camp out on stage 1, but you can stay on stage 2 and extended stage 2 for a long time if you're feeling good. It's always important to check with your body. There's no rule, it's just how you're feeling, and you'll get to know your symptoms and you'll get to know how your body responds and what to look out for as time goes on. So you can't expect to just know exactly what your body's saying right away. And then, yeah, some people move through, they'll do, only a few days on each stage and then they're done and they feel great, and then they can do the full GAPS diet for a year or so or whatever. The second question is moving on to the next stage. When do I know I can move on to the next stage? Now, this is a big myth. I really want to ingrain this in your brain. You are not waiting for all of your health symptoms to clear up before moving on to the next stage or before introducing new foods. There are severe things, rheumatoid arthritis, really bad depression, body pain, dandruff, just anything really. And they can take a long time to clear up. So if you're waiting for all those symptoms to resolve, you're never gonna make it through intro, and it's gonna be miserable because you're gonna be so restricted. And you don't have to be, necessarily. You're mainly wanting to look out for digestive symptoms, mainly diarrhea, really watery poos, blood in your poo, bloating, gas, that kind of thing is a better indicator of tolerating foods rather than all your other symptoms like eczema or whatever it may be. So don't stick on a stage until you're 100% better, because that can take years. We want to see that slow progression, but yeah, that's just kind of a recipe for disaster. And a lot of people do that and then they're like, oh man, why did I stay on that for so long? I could have been eating all these other foods. And then, maybe if they won't, go back to intro some other time, just have like a little cleanup or something. So yes, digestive upset is your main guide. But that being said, only you know yourself and you know your child better than anyone. So let's say moving on to the next stage, their symptoms are really flaring up and it's not digestive related, but like their eczema is really going crazy every time you try to move on to the next stage. Yes, it's not digestive, but you can kind of use basic sense and go, okay, I probably shouldn't be moving on yet. We're just gonna camp here for a little bit. So you have to use your own intuition and your own just common sense as well. But yeah, we just don't want to stay there fearing like I can't move on until everything's better, because that's just not reality. That is not reality, guys. And it's really important to remember that we're introducing new foods one at a time in small doses. So I think sometimes people go, okay, I'm moving from stage 1 to stage 2, so I'm going to introduce all the stage 2 foods the next day. But then you have a regression or some sort of reaction, and then you can't pinpoint what food might have been causing problems. And that's not what you want to do. If you can introduce your foods in small doses one at a time, maybe it's avocado or egg yolk. Introduce it, wait a few days, up the dose, wait a couple days, and then introduce a new food. That way you're going to have clarity on what you're reacting to, and you're not just going to be like confused about what stage you need to be on. And it's really common to go from like, I'm just making these up. These are examples. Stage 3 to stage 4, you introduce one specific food and you can handle it, and then the next food you can't handle. We don't need to stress about that. You don't necessarily need to stay on that stage until you can handle all those foods. So let's say, I keep using avocado as an example. You introduce everything else, you're going great, but you just can't handle avocado. Every time you have it, it gives you diarrhea or really bad regression, or your kid's like ADHD goes crazy every time. That doesn't mean you have to stay on that stage until you can handle avocado. Sometimes you just go, you know what? I'm not even that into avocado. Who cares? We're gonna move on without avocado. So that's one option. You can stay on that stage until you tolerate avocado if you feel that's the best way, but it's not necessary. You're not gonna be doing anything wrong if you move on without avocado. Now, I would say a rule of thumb for that is if you're moving on from one stage to another, and let's say you only tolerate 1 out of the 4 foods that you need to introduce, that's probably a sign that you want to stay on there a little bit longer and get a bit more of that deep healing before moving on. But if you're like tolerating everything, you just can't handle avocado, move on if you want. And that really is common with eggs and dairy we see. So I could do a whole video on that, but we won't. We'll just, dairy, for example, if you have like a really bad sensitivity to that, or you just keep reacting, just don't worry about dairy, move on. You don't have to have dairy. And then maybe later you can try to introduce it at some point. And finally, we're gonna focus on moving off introduction diet. When you get to the 6th stage, you're tolerating everything well, you're not having diarrhea or crazy bloating or any of that. We're gonna move on to the full GAPS diet when you feel comfortable. And in that case, you are still gonna move on to it slowly, just like you do through the stages, one at a time. You're not going from stage 6 to introducing every GAPS legal food at once. You still wanna do like one at a time and be gentle. And you might do full GAPS for a year or 2, and the whole time you can't do dairy for some reason. Please don't stress out about it. Remember our rule that our goal is recovery. It is not eating every food. Everyone is different. A lot of people react to a lot of foods. Sometimes it's just random. I've worked with people who just cannot tolerate zucchini, and it's like, they don't even love zucchini, so it's just, in the end, it's not a big deal. Maybe a year from now, they'll try to introduce it, and they probably will successfully one day. But in general, they're feeling so much better, and their anxiety's calmed down, and they're sleeping, and they're not having dandruff and rashes and everything, so they're content just not to have that food. So that is our introduction diet, frequently asked questions. Hopefully it kind of demystified it a little bit, really gave you some clarity, and if this was helpful, I'd love if you commented, or shared it with someone that it can help. Thanks for watching.